Welcome to MFP Live. I'm Donna Ladd, the founding editor of the Mississippi Free Press. And I'm thrilled today. My guest is Mississippi State Representative Kabir Karriem. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know you're from Columbus, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And tell us, let's start out for folks who aren't as familiar with you. Tell them just kind of a little bit about yourself.
Well, before I became a legislator, I served 2 terms on the Columbus City Council, where, I'm serving my current second term in the legislature. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, but raised in Columbus, Mississippi from kindergarten all the way up to I went to college, and Columbus is a place I call home.
Yeah, well, I saw on your Wikipedia page that you were born in Chicago, so I was kind of wondering, do you get back there very often?
At one time I had family there, and I used to go up there quite frequently, but it's a rarity right now.
Now, how long have you been in the legislature?
I'm serving in my second term now.
Second term. And then I see you're on the, just maybe mention real quick, run down the committees that you're involved with.
Energy, military affairs, public health, ports, harbors, and airports. And it's one more, but it's escaping me right now. But I have about 5 committee assignments. Energy,
military affairs, municipalities, is that the
municipalities? That's it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
thank you.
Good. Oh, you're welcome. So, hold on, I'm sorry, I was just chatting someone. I wanted to talk to you today largely because you had submitted what we call an MFP Voices opinion piece recently to the Mississippi Free Press, which is on the website. And it's largely focused on prison reform, criminal justice reform. And it was a really powerful piece. You kind of start out talking about how we have some sort of odd noise here. I apologize if people can hear. But you kind of start out talking about visiting Parchment, for instance, and the really bad conditions there. And you also kind of talk about your brother's experience in the criminal justice system. So just tell us, if you will, tell us a little bit about that story and why you clearly, even looking at your list of bills, have so much passion for criminal justice and prison reform.
Well, I've always been an advocate, even before I got into politics with criminal justice reform. When I was on the Columbus City Council, we were one of the first municipalities to hire ex-felons or people that have been formerly incarcerated. Because of the EOC ruling that it was a discriminatory act. So I was proud to kind of muster that through the council. But when I got to the legislature, I saw where we could do even more. And, everybody has some kind of touch to the criminal justice system, whether it's a neighbor, a family, a friend, somebody that's been touched by the criminal justice system, and because of the passion, I led a delegation to Parchment the first of last year, and it was an eye-opening event. Of course, we had already been hearing the previous year of the rash of deaths in Parchment and throughout the correctional system in the state. But we took a delegation down there, and what we saw was really, really, really horrific. Without going into the gory details, the worst thing that you can imagine was there, and just people living in those conditions was just inhumane. And I even spoke in the op-ed that I had to get myself together. I had to leave the group and say a little prayer and pray for the people that were incarcerated, but also pray for Mississippi, because I know we can do a lot better than what we're doing now in our criminal justice system.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm willing to share some of the details. I'll just read the first couple sentences of your piece. It says, when I led a delegation to the Mississippi Penitentiary at Parchman early last year, the suffocating stench of feces hung in the air. Blood was still visible on the floor from the recent rash of violence. Water was ankle deep with live wires floating like electrical eels. First of all, you're a really great writer. During the trip, I had to leave the group to collect myself and to pray. Prayers for our fellow Mississippians forced to live in those conditions, and prayers for our state because we can do better. And, you know, I think what that brought to mind for me is just that, you know, I grew up in the state, and we live in a state where people have just long chosen to forget about people within the criminal justice system. It's kind of like being thrown away, and way too many people seem to believe that whatever they get is what they deserve, just psychologically, right?
And I totally agree, and that's the impression you get when you visit Parchman. And again, look, COVID came up after our visit, so we haven't been able to get in there and see if there's been any changes. However, I felt it was my obligation to bring awareness from what we saw. Because immediately we got back and formed the Criminal Justice Task Force. And if you remember, the commissioner at that time had resigned. It was an interim commissioner that we were dealing with. So we made our findings to them. You know, we were told that some of them were corrected, but it's nothing like seeing for yourself.
Well, and I have to, I think I have to believe that, COVID has just, made our systemic issues more clear all the way across the board,
No doubt about it.
And so within prisons and the criminal justice system, it's hard to even imagine the conditions. I mean, we've reported on some of them, reports that we get about the conditions people are living in or not being able to get the health care they need and in various ways. But it's just a horrific thought to think about what they must be going through.
But it's one thing to hear about it. It's another thing to see it for yourself.
Oh, I bet.
And the legislators and the delegation that went down there, they saw firsthand of what was taking place in our institution, correctional institution. And, I don't know. Only thing that we can do is continue to be advocates and push forward because, Mississippi has a crisis as it relates to our criminal justice system. We have a issue as it relates to juvenile lifers. At one time we had over 85 individuals. I think that number is down a little bit. And by the way, let me send a shout out to Miss Kathy, who doesn't live in our state, but has been a very strong advocate for juvenile lifers in our state, coming in from out of town to go to court with these lifers. Look, I can go on and on. We have a plethora of issues in our system, and it's something that is not going away, and leadership is going to have to address it.
Before we go on and talk about the leadership a little bit, John McGee, who reports for the Mississippi Free Press from Columbus, he goes to the W, had put in the chat that as of December 2020, at least 87 Parchman inmates have tested positive for COVID-19. I'm a little worried about that, at least, though, because, I'm not sure we really know, right? So you just mentioned the leadership. So what are you seeing so far this session? We keep seeing this I think we keep seeing this kind of gradual shift in the willingness to really kind of pay attention to what's going on in our prisons. But, legislation didn't get past the governor last year. So, I mean, what are you seeing with the leadership? Is there more of a willingness, or, what's the pulse?
Look, All I can say is that I'm hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the legislature, I currently serve as vice chair of the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus, and we just came off of our meetings with leadership. We met with the governor, lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House to talk about our agenda items, which one of them being criminal justice reform. It was an interesting conversation with all three, with difference of opinions, and a few of them felt, I feel, palatable to some of the suggestions, but it's all about the action and what are we going to do? Are we going to let legislation come out and that's going to decrease our prison population and restore suffrage rights to individuals of the state? Or are we going to continue to, you know, be the second highest state with the second highest incarceration rate in the country? So, you know, those are questions that need answers. And it is some good progressive legislation out there that deals with criminal justice reform. But again, 2123 last year was not the panacea, but it did offer some incentives. It offered parole eligibility, not taking anything away from victims. It gave them a chance to participate in the hearing. And I really don't understand why the governor vetoed that particular legislation. It had bipartisan support, but it puts us back at square one for this session. And hopefully, you know, we'll try again, but there has to be a collective effort as it relates to criminal justice reform. And I'm not just talking about hodgepodge patchwork. It has to be a total program instituted that's going to help folks and not let them feel like second-class citizens in the state of Mississippi.
Well, it's systemic, and so many of these things that you're talking about, one thing is connected to another, and success relies on that, right? Well, give us some bullet. You know, I was looking at your list of legislation, is very long, and a great deal of it has to do with something to do with criminal justice in one way or another. Not all of it. There's some other things I want to get to, but tell us the most important criminal justice legislation. Like what's the groundwork that you lay so that other reforms can be successful, right? When you're talking about how they tie together.
You know, there's a plethora of things that are tied into the criminal justice work. I have to say before I start that our new public safety commissioner has instituted some of that legislation that you see that I've offered into a new bill where they're going to officer-involved shootings. They're going to get involved or let outside agency come in and investigate and prosecute. And I thought that was, I mean, I've been filing that piece of legislation ever since I've been here, and that's also huge. Entertaining the idea of body cam. So I want to put that out there. But you asked me a very good question about, you know, it was basically if I had my magic wand, what would I start off with? And that was restore the rights of individuals in the state of Mississippi as they have paid their debt to society, and they're not bogged down with the mundane, convoluted process we have at the Capitol as it relates to individuals getting their rights back. If I've paid my debt to society and I don't owe any fines or restitution, I've been out, and, you know, why am I still disenfranchised? Why is it that I have to continue to, you know, wait on the chairman of that particular committee constitute or interject rules that are subjugated on how I feel, how I look, how long you've been out, all these things that don't have any constitutional value on restoring the rights of individuals. And then you have to get a legislator to introduce a suffrage bill. Well, first you have to fill out a form. Then after the form is checked out, a legislator has to fill out a suffrage bill to get that individual rights back. It's referred to a committee. And if the chairman feels that your bill should be brought out of committee, it goes into the calendar, and then the body votes on it. Then the process starts all over again in the opposite chamber. And that particular chamber might not take up any of them. So, you know, statistics have shown that we average about seven suffrage bills a year, which is very, very discriminatory, and it's wrong. There should be a process across the board on how people can get their rights restored after they've paid their debt to society. And I think that's something that needs to be instituted immediately. And, you know, we have legislation out there, as you've highlighted, that can do just that. You know, Florida is a good example how they restored the rights of so many folks voting. Alabama has done it. You know, we have sister states out there that we could copy and paste and implement some of these changes that I'm talking about right now.
Well, you know, it's one of those issues that when you think about it in a common sense way, it doesn't make sense that especially once people have served their time, at least, you know, if people argue that they shouldn't vote while they're in prison, at least there's a logic to that. I mean, I know there are people who agree or disagree with that, but there's no logic. I mean, the only logic is really that either you don't want them voting because you think they're going to vote against you, or it's just vindictive, you know. But then that runs into problems, right? Because you have lists of different types of crimes and felonies that, you know, some are more difficult, you know, to get your voting rights back than others. And then there's like history behind that, you know, that goes back to being racially discriminatory in the past, because it was a way to, you know, back at the turn of the century or whenever it was, to keep Black people from getting their voting rights back. I mean, we know that. That's fact. Even if people don't want to talk about it out loud, it's just true. They talked about it in their discussions in the legislature and other things. So that historic record is out there. So, you know, so this idea, I mean, do you know off the top of your head, I don't have it in front of me, but what are a couple of the, like, do you know any examples of that? Like examples of, or somebody who's listening in here, an example of a law that, of the difference between the two, like the two types?
The difference between the two of what?
Well, I mean, you know, how they kind of divided the felonies into a couple different lists. So some are easier to get your rights back than others. I should have had that in front of me before I asked you the question.
23 disenfranchising crimes, 10 that were constitutionally written, and they've been added to over the years. But to your point, the basis of where we are, even in 2021, comes from the root of disenfranchising individuals from voting. I mean, there's no ands if buts about that, and there's really no rational conversation on why we can't change it. You know, why? Some of the crimes that people have paid their debt to has nothing to do with voting. Has absolutely nothing to do with voting. So, you know, I don't know. I'm just hopeful. Wow.
Yeah, I know, John. Thank you, John.
Yeah, that's what we've been saying, and that, you know, the people getting their rights back to vote has been little to none with the process that is established here. And I'm just glad you're giving me the opportunity to highlight that, because, you know, my own brother who had to do time for a crime, who's paid his debt to society, who's been out of the system for over 10 years now. He was one that I introduced legislation for last year to get his rights restored. And for whatever reason, his name died on our calendar, which we work from. And it's just so unfair, you know, and he's not the only one. I guess it's close to me because it's my blood brother.
That's right, yeah.
But just think about the ones that don't have anyone in the legislature and not having a voice, or trying to just be able to participate in the process, and they're not able to.
Well, what kills me about that is that, you know, having been on the inside, they have this view of something that is so much of a public interest that we pay for with incarceration. They have a view of it that ought to be part of the public dialogue, and that they ought to be able to vote based on that. I mean, to me, it shouldn't be a partisan issue. That's what's bizarre to me about that. And also, and I kind of wanted to roll into this anyway, but they can also see the kinds of things that happen on the inside that probably end up costing us a whole lot more, money-wise, in the way policies work. So it seems to me that people who are incarcerated or have been incarcerated need to be part of that public conversation. So if go ahead.
No doubt about it, they do.
Yeah. And then address and I mentioned their cost, and there's so many studies out there that really show that intelligent prison and criminal justice reforms actually end up saving money.
Look, it's costing the state $360 million the way we do criminal justice in the state. And with the high incarceration rate, you have legislation out there to decrease the population. One of the arguments with 2123 I heard was releasing individuals back into society would make communities safer. Well, I would have to push back on that because of my visit to Parchment. You have a lot of individuals that have aged out of crimes. Right. They've been there for decades, and where is the rehabilitation? When does that kick in? Some of these individuals there that I met came in as young men, and now they're seniors, and that's something we really have to look at. I've just been involved in so many situations. As you mentioned, I'm from Columbus, the Golden Triangle area. In that area, we've had individuals that were wrongly prosecuted. LaVon Brooks from Noxubee County, as well as Kenneth Brewer, they were accused. And I know but I'm mentioning that for a reason, because as you said earlier, people get incarcerated and it seems like they just throw them away into the system. If you've done a crime, you have to pay your debt to society. But everybody that's locked up is not guilty. And that was proven. And we have a plethora of cases that are coming to light now, from, again, LaVon Brooks to Kenneth Brewer to even the recent Curtis Flower. It was another guy, and his name escapes my name, from Lowndes County, who was just released off of death row.
Mr. Howard.
Who is that?
Mr. Howard, right? Isn't it?
Exactly.
Eddie Lee Howard. In fact,
That's
John,
right.
who's posting things here, has done a piece that we're about to come out with about Mr. Howard.
That's right.
Yeah, right. And he was on death row. And you mentioned that a man who became a very good friend of mine, named Cedric Willis, you may have heard of, from Jackson, was in Parchment, mostly in Parchment, for 12 years for rape and murder that he didn't commit, and he got out. And that's when I became friends with him. And I'll get choked up because he was killed, but later on. But I know what you mean. If people would just read Cedric's story, and many people have, and how the story we did, which is about what he went through as an innocent man in prison in Parchment, much like, whether or not you're innocent, but as an innocent person. Yeah, this was for the Jackson Free Press. And that's just a devastating story about the conditions on the inside of the prison. And this story came out, I think it's 2006. So it's not like this is new and that nobody's been talking about the conditions on the inside. and what people go through. It kind of goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, that people just, are okay if people are thrown away. And then you have, you have innocent people. And he was a young man, when he went in and when he came out. Now, somebody in the comments wanted you to talk a little bit more about ending juvenile life without parole in Mississippi. And you may or may not know that I'm rather obsessed with juvenile justice and crime prevention. So I would love to kind of go down this road. I know. So, but please address, what she's asking for. Talk about juvenile life without parole.
Well, it was ruled unconstitutional, but Mississippi is one of only 4 states that have not, converted the sentencing of these young folk to offer either parole or life with parole. And you got horror stories there of individuals sitting in county jails just waiting for their retrials. Look, we've got some serious issues. There's no ands, if, buts about it. I know legislation was, I personally did not offer any legislation this year on juvenile justice, but it was some in the Senate. The chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, Senator Angela Turner Ford, offered some last year. I don't know if it was reintroduced, but if it wasn't reintroduced, I'm sure it was reintroduced. But it's just time for us to have a serious conversation about where we are. It's not getting any better. We know the horror stories. We know the lawsuits that the state is facing. We can just look over to our other states, Alabama and Louisiana, what they had to go through. And it's just something that needs to be addressed.
Someone in the comments is asking if you would consider co-signing a bill for ending juvenile life without parole.
Absolutely. But here's the deal. The deadline, because we're on a 90-day schedule now, has already passed. But if there's if there's a bill with the code section, I would be more than happy to offer an amendment on the floor if it comes up, because I'm just as passionate about ending that particular situation as I am with everything else, because all of it's intertwined. Right. It's just, all of it. And I don't think there's anything greater than the other. Our criminal justice system needs reworking.
Now, you say everything's intertwined there. And also, it kind of makes me think about, two things, really. One is this idea of, criminal justice reform is becoming, it nationally and somewhat in the state, is becoming more bipartisan, which should be in the first place. Right. But, and so you have some interesting coalitions, it seems like, where, the unexpected that are coming together, and even some conservative money that is backing various reforms, which feels like a good thing, anything that can be bipartisan. But then I always want to ask people, there's a lot of kind of, I guess you could call it fixation on, that's the wrong word because that sounds negative, but there's a lot of attention to reentry, which is urgent and important. But to me, as someone who is very interested on the front end with juvenile, with evidence-based juvenile crime prevention, right? And how young people are treated both in the schools as well as from everything from gang laws to, and most of these, and a lot of those approaches are racist. They just are, because of the way they're applied. We had some work I did a couple years ago found that the existing gang law had never been used on a white person, for instance, and we have a serious white gang issue in the state. So why I'm asking you this is to just get you to address this systemic need. It's like we need to keep people from going in, as well as help them come out. And sometimes I worry about that there's a lot of attention on helping them, more attention helping them come out, and maybe a little less evidence-based attention on how we can keep them from going in. So I'm just curious what you would say about any of that.
I agree with you 1,000% that we don't put the emphasis on those things that will keep our children or even individuals from getting involved in the system. As we say, it's easy to get in trouble and it's so hard to get out of. And it seems like that's been the mantra of how we got to where we are today. You know, poverty, underfunding education, communities where, you know, that there's a influx of drugs and the inability to find employment. You know, look, all of that plays into where we are. Not making any excuses. Not making any excuses at all. However, you know, those factors play a part in where we are. And when you get into the system and you get out, there's no help. They you know, throw you out into the world and say, do the best you can. And I've been in communications up my way with EMCC Community College, trying to talk about reentry programs that we can partner with the college where individuals that have been formerly incarcerated can come and find some type of trade or enhance something they may have learned while they were incarcerated, and take away some of the barriers. You know, at one time, I don't know if this is still the case, but you know, you couldn't even be a felon and get barber license, you know, cosmetology license. You know, it was a lot of things that made it difficult for employment, and that just shouldn't be the case. We just should not continue to make it difficult for people to live in our society that have made a mistake. America is the country of second chances, and Mississippi should be the state of second chances and lead the way on where we should go and what we should be doing right now.
Well, and if we look at it from this perspective, it's like if people can't work and they can't take care of themselves or can't take care of their families, that's when they tend to get in trouble again. And that's how the cycle, right? You know, it's like the cycle continues. So that's what always gets me. And if we actually want to prevent crime and violence, then we would do some things differently. You know, like you talked about officer-involved shootings, another of my obsessions. But, you know, research shows reducing officer-involved shootings and over-policing in general in various ways does decrease crime. You know, it changes you know, police do contribute to violent communities. They don't like it when you say that, but the research proves it. Bad police, not, you know, bad policing. And then the other thing you said that I meant to say something about earlier, you were talking about the people in prison, right? Who, you know, people are worried about them getting back out. And you said they've aged out of crime. Well, one of these credible messenger programs, such as Jackson has been trying, we haven't had too many of them in the state, but what is true is that a lot of the people you're talking about who've aged out of crime, one of their biggest goals tends to be, right, to keep other young people from getting into crime.
Exactly.
So there is kind of a use for them back in the communities to do that kind of work, right?
I agree with you. And, you know, all the pieces of the puzzles that we need are right there. It's just putting it together and making it work for the people of Mississippi. Everybody has a role to play. Even that person that's incarcerated, they have a role to play. But you have to have a mindset to want to change. Now, let's not get it twisted. The system is working exactly how it was designed to work.
Yes.
As far as incarceration, that's why we call it criminal justice reform. And that's why we're talking about things that will reform the system as we see it. Again, it's up to the leadership to listen to individuals who have firsthand experience and know what will make the criminal justice system, and to buy in, or their particular party buy into the reforms that are talked about at the Capitol. You know, the reason we got here is because it was a period of time where everybody wanted to lock everybody up. 3 strikes, you're going to jail.
The crime bill days.
Crime bill, and all of that is why we're here.
Right.
For a little nothing. It's a lot of nonviolent offenders are locked up with a lot of time that really needs to be looked at.
I'm curious real quick what you think of, the Biden administration is kind of going after private prisons. What's your take on that?
Look, when I saw it on the news yesterday, I had to find out how many private prisons we had in the state, which I found out we had 3, but they're not federal. They're state. We only have 1 federal prison, and I think that's in Yazoo. Look, I commend the Biden administration on a lot of their executive orders and their stances on things, particularly as it relates to criminal justice. And I'm looking for even more from the administration to kind of lead the way that we can copy and paste here in Mississippi.
Now, I want to shift a little bit because I could talk to you the whole time about criminal justice reform. But you just listed a few. You were talking about education and poverty and other issues that are connected to crime. The one you didn't mention, but I suspect I'm guessing that you might include in there is poor health care.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
So, and I know that you support Medicaid expansion.
I do.
Talk about that. And, it's an issue that, here in the middle of COVID, it seems to be such a huge issue. And Mississippi is one of a minority of states that hasn't expanded Medicaid. So talk about why that's important.
Look, I just today, the Biden administration talked about expanding Medicaid and opening up the affordable health care again for people to sign up. Look, Mississippi is suffering tremendously. They were suffering before COVID, and COVID just really blew us away as it relates to healthcare. And I mean, Medicaid expansion at this particular point, it was definitely a no-brainer before, but it is sure enough, we have to do it now. Our folks, our rural hospitals are closing, and it's just so much that the expansion of Medicaid could cover and help. And again, it's on the leadership to listen and have an open and honest conversation about where we are in Mississippi and how the expansion of healthcare can help us. I know that there's a match, but the jobs that it could create, I remember when the affordable healthcare came out, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was like thousands of jobs and billions of dollars that it would have been influxed into our state. I don't know how much now, but I'm sure it's a lot. But it's something that needs to be looked at immediately.
One of our reporters, Nick Juden, who is now with Mississippi Free Press, had been with Jackson Free Press, but I kind of asked what he would ask you about Medicaid. And he said, there's obviously institutional hostility, is his phrase, toward the expansion of Medicaid in Mississippi. And his question is, what kinds of conversations are you having, like with other leaders and legislators, about methods of expanding Medicaid and access and support in the state? Okay,
so I'm on the municipal committee. And today we passed a bill out of committee that would offer for those that are eligible to get off the county or city's municipal health care and get on Medicaid. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, if that's an option for folks and we're getting ready to pass legislation, why are we not making it more accessible? Why are we not expanding Medicaid for individuals? I mean, we're cutting the costs for people that work for counties and municipal government, that they can go get on Medicaid if they want to save money on their health care. But why aren't we expanding Medicaid for those who really need health care in the state. So I'm for it. I think it's something that needs to happen. Whether it's going to happen, you never know here. No one would have ever thought that we would have got rid of the flag, but we did.
Right.
We came here one day and the conversation has started. And before we left, we were voting to get rid of the old flag. So you just never know here at the Capitol.
If I may point out something with this map, that could you bring the map back up? Thank you. On the screen here, that is almost the old Confederacy that has not expanded Medicaid. I'm just going to point that out. Louisiana and Arkansas, have, but and I'm not doing this clicking around. I could never pull this off and sit here and talk to you. But yeah. So there are a lot of maps that overlap with the old Confederacy. But here's another one that, with some exceptions there. But that's I don't know. That's remarkable when you think about it. Okay, so you don't have a sense right now of whether it's possible this session that it could actually happen.
I don't. Deadline is one day next week. Of course, you know that we're doing virtual committee meetings right now at the Capitol, and we go back for floor debate on the 3rd of February. So it's going to be interesting to see what bills come out of committee. Hopefully, there's some real discussion about Medicaid expansion here in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk to you. I saw some, one of the things I keep seeing, all the people are talking, like on Twitter and social media, there seems to be a plethora of bills to, how do you put it, like patriotic education bills to various kinds of bills to make sure that that I'm trying to think of a diplomatic way to say it. I tend to say that racist history isn't continued to be taught, or there are a plethora of bills to make sure that our revisionist racist history does continue to be taught, right? So, and did that make sense? So, like I saw today there's a bill that is against that is trying to stop the teaching of the 1619 Project in Mississippi schools. There's another, Governor Tate Reeves had said that he wanted this patriotic education thing, the same thing that's kind of, tracking with the 1776 Commission. And a lot of this, a lot of this is, I think, pushing back on, perhaps, because I see on your bill list, you had some legislation where you're trying to get more true, I think, African-American history and taught in our schools. So I guess my question to you, and then obviously you can say anything you want about it, but why do you think right now there's so much effort to ensure that we don't do too much to change the way history has kind of has been historically taught in our state? And
I think it's a form of white supremacy. I think it's a form of keeping control of the mindsets of individuals. It's going to be interesting 50 years from now how the story is going to be told about January 6th and what took place at the Capitol.
That's right. Yeah.
The revisionist history that we always hear about the Confederate and why the war was actually fought was disingenuous. And I didn't learn that in elementary school, or, it's research and college classes that I had to take to find out the real story. And I don't know why people want to paint some of the history with rose-tinted glasses, but we need to tell the truth as it relates to the history. And I think it will empower young folk and how to deal with diversity here in the country as well as the state. Once I know your history and you know mine, we can be well receptive of each other and well respected of each other. But if all I hear is that you're great, I'm not, I came over here in the ship, then there was Martin Luther King, I was a slave, Martin Luther King, and then Barack Obama, and now I'm here today. Now it's Kamala Harris. Well, it's a lot that has happened between those years and needs to be talked about. And so that's why I felt necessary for that bill to be introduced. And I later found out that it's already a law on the book for African American studies to be taught. It's just not being taught.
It's not being done.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's funny you say that, because I was the same way. I grew up in Neshoba County, and I had to learn so much history on my own because I was lied to. And I'm one of those, used to be young people, but who's mad about it, and I'm white, and I'm mad about that. I'm mad about this idea that I can handle the truth, right? It's like, and I think what you're saying feels right to me in the sense of, you're talking about empowering young folks. But I think it is empowering young folks to learn this history. And that's perhaps why we're getting so many efforts to not teach it, right? I also saw that you went to Mississippi State, as did I. And I can tell you that until last year, I did not understand the history of Stephen D. Lee. And for those of you who don't know, and John McGee, in fact, who's been commenting on here, and I did a story, I don't know if you saw it, but did a story that really unpacked the role that Stephen D. Lee, who was a former Confederate officer who founded Mississippi State, as you know, or helped found, and was the first president, really played a larger role, and one of the largest roles in ensuring that revisionist history about the Confederacy and the lost cause was taught in textbooks. And that's a long, drawn out thing. People could read the story. There's a lot in there, but the fact that I didn't know that really until last year is just stunning to me. And I went there. I passed that bust on the drill field all the time. It says CSA, but it's kind of small. And then I was going through my mother's pictures the other day. My 1983 invitation to my school graduation had that man's drawing on it with the CSA on there. And I never noticed it. And so I tell you that story to say, this is our own alma mater. And that's the center of campus, right? And he was someone who he didn't just fight in the Confederacy. He pushed this revisionism across the country. And so, so we changed the flag last year, or y'all did, everybody did. It was a whole bunch of people up in that flag. So I guess what I to turn this into a question instead of a lecture or a speech, what do we do now about all the rest of this stuff? About the Confederate statues and what do we do now? What should happen next in your view?
Interesting fact. Now, I graduated from Stephen D. Lee High School.
In Columbus.
Mm-hmm. They call it short for Lehigh. It no longer exists.
That's right.
And then graduated from Mississippi State. But to answer your question about what to do now with the Confederate statues, look, history, everything has its place. And, I'm not one to be talking about destroying Confederate statues, but I think history needs to be put in its proper perspective. The real story has to be told. Mm-hmm. I do not agree with these Confederate statues on public property.
Oh,
I think that is something that is that is not right. Mm-hmm. Luckily for us in Lowndes County, we're removing a huge Confederate statue off the courthouse lawn and putting it in Friendship Cemetery, mm-hmm. a historical Confederate a historical war cemetery, because it has Union soldiers as well as Confederate soldiers.
And I think S.D. Lee is buried there too, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Yeah.
So I think it has its proper place, but we have to tell the real story. we have to tell the real story about these men that have been exalted to superhero, immortal status in what they did. And I think America will be better when they do tell the real story. And there has been a push to rename some of these military bases across the country that are named after some of these Confederate generals as well. I love history. I can read about it all day. I can talk about it all day and all night. But some of these statues belong in a museum. They don't belong on public property. But that is my take on that. And hopefully there will also be a movement to have a real conversation about some of this revisionist history that has been dispersed throughout the annals of time.
So y'all are for sure moving yours, though, in Lowndes County.
No doubt about it. It's already been voted on. It's such a huge structure.
Oh, I know.
There's some logistical problems that they ran into, but it has been voted on. It's going to be relocated. Yeah,
because I think a handful around the state. I think in Greenville and a few other places have voted to move theirs. But then like you say, it's not the easiest thing to move either. So you kind of have to figure it out from there.
But people need to understand that it was a concentrated effort when these statues started erecting all over the country to change the narrative of why the war was fought. Some would disagree with that, but that's just a historical fact. From the daughters of Confederates to the knights of whatever. I mean, it was a concentrated effort to revisit and retell the story.
Well, and if people are interested in this, they could read that Stephen D. Lee story, or that Starkville story that we did. You're right, and Stephen D. Lee was the head of the United Veterans, and they were. You're right. They did. It was purposeful. I mean, it was very changed the narrative, and they even called it a reconciliation. And they got the white North to go along with a lot of it, because, and I have to be honest with you, I've thought about it since January 6th. Well, let's have unity, and let's make it okay. But a lot of that making it okay in our country at those moments is really kind of making it okay for a lot of white people who don't want to deal with those facts. And so we have to be careful right now, I think, because unity can mean, not facing the whole history. And,
no doubt about it. And I wish that we could speed time up to see, but I want to bet you a dime to a dollar that the narrative 50 years from now of what they did on that dreadful day will be changed by some.
Yeah. Wow. And we'll go back to what I would say to anybody listening is like, look, white people love to say, I didn't do all that back then. And they're right. So why in the world can it possibly hurt you to know the truth of it? Especially if it's ancestors you never knew. I had stinker ancestors too, who did a lot of bad things, including, a lot of people fought in the Confederacy. And so I don't get that argument at all, especially if, kind of as you've been talking about, you can use that history to then understand why things are the way they are now and what we can do to make it better, right?
No doubt about it. It's understanding one another and respecting one another. And you can do that with a good conversation about the truth. And that's just something that needs to be. And I encourage your listeners that whenever they get an opportunity to speak truth to power, do it. You making that person whole by speaking truth to power. And if you both don't know, let's find out together. Let's find out the truth together on what really took place.
That's right, because it all matters. Well, I think I'm being told that we're at the end of the show. Is there any quick last comment that you would like to make of any sort?
You know, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be before your audience and speak to you today. I really enjoyed it. I look forward to doing this again whenever you need somebody to talk to. And I would welcome you to the Capitol to see how legislation is made. But due to COVID, visitation is limited. But as soon as it's over with, I would love to have you or your audience come to the Capitol and just visit us and see how things are made on a daily basis here at the Capitol.
We will. And thank you so much, Representative Karriem. I knew after reading your piece that it would be a great conversation, and it definitely has been. And to those watching, this recording will be there, and it'll be also, if you go to the front page of mfp-live.org, there's a section for MFP Live where you can share this one or watch it again or tell other people about it, as well as our past episodes. So please do that, and please get in touch with me if there's someone that you would that you recommend that I have a conversation with here. We're trying to talk to people around the state of Mississippi, just a wide variety of people about what's on their minds. So please get in touch about that, and keep reading mfp-live.org. We're about 10 months old, but it's been a great run through difficult times. And if there's anybody out there who feels the need to give us some support, we are a nonprofit, and we survive and grow based on your donations. And so you could go to mfp.ms/donate. And you give us $5 a month, and we will love you forever. Whatever amount that you can throw in the pile, in the tip jar, as you will. You're helping us just grow our staff. And so to everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I will see you in a couple of weeks. I think with publisher Kimberly Griffin's going to be at my side on that one. We're still confirming our guest. So thank you very much. And again, thank you so much, Representative Karriem. It's been an honor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.